Coach, hey, thanks for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach. Appreciate you giving me some of the most important commodity of all, which is time. So I appreciate you taking the time to join me. I will say, I think you were it was actually your first recording. The first recording I ever did, what I call Fields of Dreams, where I visit a college campus and take pictures and find the field and whatnot. Just so happened to be the Coast Guard Academy. And it just so happened to be probably one of the coldest days of the year. And as I was walking around, I noticed some of the students there, shorts and a t-shirt, and without a care in the world. And so ever since then, I was like, these guys must be tough as nails. So I need to talk to the coach. So after 3 years or whatever it was, I appreciate you hopping on.
Gotcha.
All right. So, and then lastly, I just noticed this, which is, I might blur it out. It's on principle, the Hala Madrid scarf in the background. That's a real bitter pill, tough pill for me to swallow right now. So I may blur that out, and I'm just saying that from a logistics standpoint.
It's okay.
Hey, let's. I always start with the basics since you're a rookie. Can you just talk about your soccer journey? How did you end up being the head coach at the Coast Guard Academy?
Yeah. So I grew up in Connecticut, grew up in Farmington, Connecticut. Strong soccer town in the state. Was lucky enough to grow up being coached by first generation immigrants, really. You know, like my coach for the first 3 years of my life was Uruguayan, and Italian, Scottish. So I had a good base. Did well in high school. Went to Middlebury College, Division III program, played there for 4 years. Was an All-American my senior year, was an economics major. So, the whole point of my life was supposed to be to go to Wall Street and get rich. And
I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah,
but that's
oddly,
okay.
I did actually, and I didn't get rich. But one of the biggest single day crashes was October of '87.
Yes.
So I graduated in '87, and I decided I was going to go back to Middlebury and just coach the JV team and take my time getting into the world of finance, which I did. But then the market crashed, so the jobs were pretty thin. I did end up getting a job down on Wall Street. I did that for about a year and really just wasn't happy. Was lucky enough to have some guidance. Somebody said, do what you love to do. So I went back to the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, got a sport management master's, which at the time was one of the few really good programs in the country. So lucky enough, get a grad assistant position and worked the first semester with Peter Gooding over at Amherst College, longtime coach there, longtime athletic director at the Division III level, and then did the second semester with Jeff Gettler at UMass. So I get to work for two different high-level coaches and got my master's. Found my first job, full-time job down at Drew University, down in your neck of the woods, working for Vern Mummer.
45 minutes from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Assistant soccer coach, business manager position. So I was there for 3 years. A couple things happened in life in terms of things that went on with my soon-to-be wife, and we decided to pick up and move back to Vermont. And I took a job at Champlain College, which is a 2-year junior college. They had only 3 sports at the time: men's, women's soccer, and men's basketball. And it was a Division I JUCO program, so I had a little bit of scholarship money. Spent 4 years there, had a lot of success at the JUCO level, and then took a head job down at Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, New York. Was lucky enough, Andy Jennings, who was the AD and soccer coach at the time, gave up coaching, hired me, went down, and I loved it. And then this job opened, and it was different, right? It was sort of unique, and I put my name in for it, got an interview and came up, and was lucky enough to get hired by Ray Seplick, who another sort of soccer legend. He was also the athletic director and the soccer coach here. So he was giving up the soccer job. So I've been here ever since. You get to a place. We had some roots here. My wife's family had a house about 10 miles away from here, so that we knew the area. We moved, and then we moved with a couple of young kids, and then they get into schools, they get into the system, and they're
Yeah,
happy,
yeah,
we're happy, and you're not moving again,
yeah,
right? So
yeah, yeah.
I didn't really look after that.
Hmm.
So here I am, starting year 23, at a place that is pretty awesome to coach at in terms of the people, the quality of people that you work with, not only the cadets and our players, but just in general, faculty, staff, the officers. It's a different
Yeah,
level of I think professionalism.
yeah. I so that's what struck me. I thought like there's got to be it's I get these I go to schools and there's great schools out there, but it when I visited the academy, there was something to it, and I passed a bunch of guys and gals in uniform and all that kind of, and there just seemed to be something very different in a good way
Mm-hmm.
that I just really intrigued me. And as someone who says even to this day, like if I had to do it all over again, I would go into one of this. I would try to go either the service academy route, or I would go into, just because of the men and women that I see coming out of there, just really impressive types. So, um, it, uh, can, can you just talk a little bit? Look, I gotta, maybe I don't get it, but I gotta believe that recruiting for you ends up being a lot different than your neighbors right down the street
Mm-hmm.
at Con College, right? Like,
Yep.
how does that work for you? Because I gotta believe there's a little bit of, you know, you're looking for people, but there's people that are coming to you because it's so
Right.
specific. Maybe you could talk a little bit
It's
about
a little
that.
bit. I guess you could call it proactive and reactive recruiting, right? So
Mm-hmm.
proactive is you're out on the road, you're going to, different showcases, you're looking at kids, and then you're coming back and you're reaching out, or you're reaching out to club coaches, however it is a traditional program might do it, to try to stir some interest. And that is certainly a way that we do things, but there's also, yeah, like reactionary. There are kids who know full well that they want to be at a service academy, and they're reaching out to us. So it's a combination of trying to increase the pool size every year of kids that you're looking at who might be interested. Um, but hey, I can go to a club, an ECNL national showcase, and see hundreds of kids that can play at this level.
Mm-hmm.
One, academically, it gets whittled down pretty quick. The average GPA here is about a 3.7 or higher coming in.
Really?
Yeah, SAT averages are probably about 1360 or higher.
Wow.
Um, so
I
the
had
fun,
no idea.
yeah,
Like I had no idea about
funnel
that
gets
part.
small really, really quick when you think about like
Yeah.
the type of kid. And then so the other challenge here, um, the school's only got 1,100 students, so an incoming class is 300 every year. So 40% of that is female. So if you do the math, there's just not many, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not many kids coming into a class, and we've got 23 sports that we need to recruit for. So it's a fight, right? To
Mm-hmm.
to develop a pool and to have a strong class. The added difficulty is that if you're going to a U.S. Service Academy, you've got to take the Department of Defense medical exam review. Like
Mm-hmm.
you've got to take a medical exam, and so you've got to pass that test. Um, so you might find this kid that you fall in love with, and he falls in love with the academy, and then you ask him a simple question like, "Are you colorblind?" And if he answers yes, then he's off the table. Um, Got to
Wow.
be able to tell red from green on the water, right?
Yeah.
Looking at buoys,
Yeah.
allergies, peanut allergies, any sort of asthma. Those are disqualifiers, which makes it a challenge. And then you might find a kid that you fall in love with and decides to come and commits, and then tears an ACL, and then they're not coming.
Yeah.
And they can defer for a year, but you have to be fully fit for duty when you arrive on July 1st for our swab summer, which is our 7 week sort of in doc boot camp type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can, Wow,
right?
I didn't realize. First of all, I didn't know. I always knew the academies, the academics were, it was pretty tough. I didn't realize for the Coast Guard it was
Yep.
that high. I mean, that's pretty elite, right? Like
Yep.
comparable to some of the Ivies and all that, right? Like
Yeah. I mean,
at
it's,
that level.
yeah, probably just a little bit below where they are, but
Hmm.
similar to the NESCAC probably level in terms of
Yeah.
that type of thing. Yeah. And then, less than 1% of the population in this country will serve its country.
Hmm.
So that's a pretty small
Yeah.
number of
Yeah.
people who are making that choice.
Can you talk a little bit about that swab summer? I think you
Hmm.
said. I know a little bit about it just because of having seen it posted on a couple places following the academy, and it's like who needs preseason when you have that, right? Like that's what it appears to me as an outsider. But could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, we call it day one. So, day one this year is July 1, which is a Monday. Um, Kids will get here at 6 a.m. Um, and they basically they get here at 6. They bring in all their paperwork. They say goodbye to their folks. They go get on a bus, and 8 hours later, their head is shaved, and they're some semblance of marching. And
Yeah.
they literally have this great ceremony, swearing in ceremony, where they swear into the military. They get 10 minutes to say goodbye to their folks, and then swab summer starts. 5 a.m. in the morning every day. Starts with calisthenics. Um, and then the next 7 weeks are a just grind of physical, mental, and academic testing. And the military uses boot camp or swab summer, whatever it is, at any level, to sort of to make someone be a follower, right? So you might come in thinking that you're a leader and that you know how to do things, but they're going to basically strip you down of all that, and then build you back up. And that's what the whole 200-week experience of the academy is, right? You start as a
Hmm.
follower, and then you grow through the course of the 4 years to become a leader, ready to then graduate and go out in the Coast Guard and be an officer.
Hmm.
And that's pretty much what all the academies do. So,
Hmm.
everybody's got some sort of in-doc period. That might be shorter at some of the other schools for athletes. For us, it doesn't matter whether you're an athlete or not. So swab summer ends on a Friday, and we start practice on a Saturday. So you talk about being physically fit. Yeah, I do believe that the swabs are physically fit, but they're also exhausted. So it
Yeah.
takes a pretty special freshman to contribute
Hmm.
right out of the gate, because they've been they've been
Beaten down.
beaten down for sometimes 7 weeks,
Physically.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but they do. There are kids who just have that ability to deal with it, and those are the kids that are going to play maybe right away.
Hmm.
But each year, I might think that there could be 3 or 4 kids who are going to impact, and a couple of them just won't adapt as quickly, and it takes them a little bit longer. Um,
Hmm.
so it's freshman year, definitely a challenge, because then academically you've got to get yourself into a rhythm. You've also then got to there's quite a few military obligations during the course of a day,
Hmm.
that you have to do. So it's like athletics, academics, military, and it's a long day.
Hmm.
6 a.m. and you're going to bed at 11 or 12, and you're not getting much sleep.
Yeah. And all of that. I mean, if they're participating, like, how do you balance the? I'm just curious. How do you balance a cadet's military academic requirements with any requirements that you would have to be on the team?
Mm.
And I gotta, I'm guessing, like, priority, I would assume, is on the military and the academics, right? Is that
I'd say, yeah, yep.
right?
Academically first, because you've got to survive academically. The military stuff
Mm-hmm.
is stuff that you do, right. There are
Mm-hmm.
trainings, there's um, things there's different benchmarks that you have to meet, but
Mm-hmm.
they're typically not physically demanding. They're just demanding of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then athletically, um, the day is structured here. So athletically, we have a block of time to practice, to train every day, and it doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
So, we get out there about 3:30 and we're done by 6. And like when I first got here, yeah, if I had 2 hours and 15 minutes, I'd use all 2 hours and 15 minutes. The
Mm-hmm.
longer you are here and the more you realize that sort of less is more,
Mm-hmm.
those sessions get smaller,
Mm-hmm.
because you realize that sometimes it's more important to get them up to a meal and get them studying so that they can get to bed so that they're well rested for the next day
Mm-hmm.
if you've got a game, as
Yeah.
opposed to pushing them too much. um,
Yeah.
so it's a challenge, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also like if you ask any cadet probably what the highlight of their time is at the academy, if they're a varsity sport member, they're going to tell you that that was the highlight of their time, right?
Yeah.
Because they're part of a team. Culturally, it's an important thing to have upper class to look after the underclass,
Mm-hmm.
and they love it. So, and they play
Yeah.
because they love it, not because they have to.
Have to.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they're playing
Yeah.
like because they want to play, because it's
Yeah.
the best thing that they do all day.
Yeah.
Um,
I would think too, right? Like, yeah, like a kid's, for all the demands that are placed on them as cadets, you have to love it to show up on a field. Because if you don't love it, then you have to question, like, why am I doing this?
yeah, and
I'm
I think
tired, I'm hungry,
that's
whatever the case may be.
a really important component for the players who aren't playing as much, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing,
Yeah.
it's great, right? But not
Yeah.
everybody plays all the time, and trying to figure out what your role is and whether or not you want to put that time in
Yeah.
when you've got so many other time demands.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that I'm proud about in terms of our program, is that I think that everybody wants to be a part of the culture that we have, so we don't lose too many players too often,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Right.
Um, so that's good.
Mm-hmm. T- t- this is a weird question, but talk to me how you compete. Like, how do you, like, as a team, you going up against varied schools like you would, but, and again, knowing that you have this different sort of structure to how you are, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
part of the program, but part of the school. Like, when you step out on a field, is there something unique about the Coast Guard Academy program that gets you to compete at a level that you might not otherwise do if you didn't have all of this framework, this cultural framework around you? I don't know if that made any
It
sense,
makes
but
perfect sense, and I think
yeah.
it is part of who we are, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't think like so. We walk out on a field. One, I think we sometimes are held to a little bit of a higher standard in terms of how we behave, right? And if we
Mm-hmm.
don't, and we have players who make mistakes during the course of,
Mm-hmm.
and,
Sure.
and might say something to a ref or to another an
Mm-hmm.
opposing teammate, or you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I think like if you asked most opposing coaches who play against us what their thoughts would be, they would tell you that it's not an enjoyable game to play because of the fact that we don't quit, right? And we work and we get
Yeah.
stuck in and we're not afraid. So
Mm-hmm.
those are challenges for teams, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's a great part of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way training sessions are. I mean, like our training sessions are very, very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
At times I've tried to dial them back, and they don't want to be dialed back,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that
Not in their
sometimes
nature.
sometimes works against us, right? Because somebody
Yeah.
can get hurt in training, but
Yeah.
we don't like we very rarely have we ever sat in a match, no matter who we're playing.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
just not in their DNA. So I've gotten to the point like, look, if they're just better than us, then they're better than us. Like but we're kicking off and we're kicking off to play. Like we're not
Yeah.
dropping 11 players behind the ball and looking to defend for 90 minutes and hit
Mm-hmm.
you on the counter. They don't like that. So we don't do
Yeah.
it.
I I think this is a couple years ago. I watched you. I think it was MIT at home, and it was later in the season. I thought, and it was like cold and MIT. I think this was a couple years ago where they. I think they were top 20 at the time. Very good soccer wise, and I was struck by how much they had to respond to you all because it was almost like you did. I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but you didn't care about MIT. You don't care about their record. You're like, your guys were just like, we're going after it,
Mm-hmm.
and not even thinking about, hey, we're just going to keep playing and we're going to keep going. And for 90 minutes that I watched, it was like full throttle the whole time, and I thought that was the I I, I was stunned by it because I kept waiting, oh, they'll go 20 minutes at this high velocity thing, and no, it just kept going, and it's got to be exhausting for a team on the receiving end of that. And that struck me as, man, if you keep that pace up, like, that is just hard to deal with.
Mm. It
you
is,
know
and
yeah,
but it's kind of it's the way we can be successful.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, but we've got good players. We've got we've had
No, yeah, I
no,
wasn't
we've
not
no,
saying
we've
that
had
you don't have
we've
bad.
just had
Yeah.
some good players come through here, like high level kids.
Hmm.
Occasionally we do have kids who could play at the Division I level, and they just want to be
Hmm.
a Coast Guard officer. So that's the choice
Hmm.
that they make.
Yeah.
And then we've got kids who have to work hard to be
Yeah.
successful, right? And it's a
Yeah.
matter of trying to blend those guys together
Yeah. Yeah.
and figuring out what's best for us in terms of
Hmm.
style of play. And recruits often ask, like, okay, like, what's your style? Are you a possession based team?
Hmm.
I typically say, yeah, we're a possession based team when we're better than the team we're playing against, and when we're not,
Yeah.
then we're not a possession based team, right? I mean, that's
Hmm.
there's very few teams in the world, and I'm talking at the professional level, right, that you would say are a possession based team all the time. Man City, right? I mean, they're better than
Hmm.
everybody every game, right? So they're always going to have more possession.
Hmm.
But and if it's the same in our conference, or it's the same if we're going to go across the street and play Con, who've really
Hmm.
elevated their program to such a high level that they are adamant about the fact that they're going to play a certain way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I sort of applaud that in him,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. And you're right. He has gotten to a level where he can afford to say that, right, and do that, right,
mhm.
because he knows that 95, 98% of the teams is going to play. He can do that around, and then, hey, could you talk a little bit about the new Mac? What it looks like for you? What your impressions of it are?
Yeah, it's
I haven't spoken to anybody from the new Mac, surprisingly enough.
yeah,
I've tried, but yeah.
I think it's a really strong conference. Historically, um, Babson is probably the most you know sort of celebrated in terms of their history.
Hmm.
Um, COVID has changed a little bit of the landscape the last few years, right? Because some of the schools in the NUMAC have graduate programs, and some of the schools don't, right? So, um, MIT, Babson, and WPI have the ability to have their seniors stay an extra year to
Hmm.
get some sort of grad degree, or if you're Babson, then you've got this 1 year MBA program. They've attracted
Hmm.
some really high quality D1 transfers who've had this year of
Hmm.
eligibility. Um, but top to bottom, um, it Emerson came in about like 8 years ago, and they really struggled for a few years, and then all of a sudden, um, 2 years ago they were in the final, I think.
Hmm.
And so there's nobody who is an easy out during the course of the season. Like every single game you play is going to be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Salve Regina came into the conference last year, had historically been at the top of the Commonwealth, and finished, I think, 7th or 8th maybe in the conference their first year in. And they're a good team. And I think they figured out that, wow, every single game is a dogfight. There's just nobody that is going to be, I'm chalking that one up as a W, right? And I think the NUMAC does a great job of scheduling out of conference too. Some of the better, everybody is playing the NESCACs. Everybody's playing some of the top teams in the Little East or the Commonwealth. And as you know, New England has got so many Division III programs that everybody has some quality teams. So, but the NUMAC strong. It's a great example would be the 2022 season, which I thought we were actually a very good team. I think we finished 10-4-3, and we didn't make the conference tournament.
Wow.
And it was just crazy because we lost 4 conference games, all I think, probably by a goal or something like that. And we were on the outside looking in. Whereas the year before we were in the semis, last year we were in the semis. So, and that's kind of where we've gotten to, I think gotten into the tournament probably 16 out of the 22 years I've been here. And we've gotten to the semis. I haven't been to a final yet. That's kind of really gnawing at me, because we've been good enough. We've We've lost on penalties 5 times in semifinals.
Oh my gosh.
But our Achilles heel here is typically goal scoring. It's not keeping the ball out of the back of the net, So I always say the flamboyant striker does not choose a military
academy.
So we're frequently turning somebody into a center forward. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I never would have thought. That's interesting. And that's interesting. That's you're right. Like
there's definitely personality in different positions.
No, sure, yeah.
Right. So it's.
And you can almost make a psychological case for that, right? Like why you can get defenders and midfielders, but you struggle to find the goal scorers, right? Like you can make a case for why, right? You get midfielders tend to be your leadership guys going forward, and your defenders are your rocks, right? Like I'm just not going to allow somebody to get behind me, and that probably fits the mold more than a guy who's like a little bit self-centered, wants the ball all the time and will do whatever he wants and figure something out to score a goal.
Yep.
Like I could totally envision that. I don't know if it's accurate, but that's anyhow. What's the game of the season for you? Or is there a game of the season where it's like you circle it every year and you think this is the game that is either the most fun, which is perfectly acceptable, or it's the game that's going to dictate, or is going to tell you where you guys are going to fall for that year?
Well, I think that the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy and the Coast Guard Academy are sort of like Army Navy in terms of that military rival, right? They make a big deal out of the football game. ESPN broadcasts it, which is pretty cool. And I think that's called the Secretary's Cup. And then there's also something that there is a Superintendent's Trophy, which is just a running total of how each program,
like the President's or the Lear Trophy,
So that gets a fair amount of excitement out of both programs. That game's usually within the first few weeks of the season. It's crazy. The first 11 years I was here, we never won a game against them. And now we're on this 11-year having not lost a game. Or 9. I think 2015 was the last time we lost. But between 2012 and 2023, it's just that one loss. And it's just been an interesting. It's a fun game because they're similar to us in terms of their genetic
Sure.
makeup, so
Mm.
it's like, it can be a fast, furious, like if you get assigned that as a referee, you're sort of like, I better get a good night's sleep than I
Yeah, yeah.
right.
Either that or be like, huh, my hamstrings are, maybe I
Exactly.
shouldn't do this
Yeah.
game.
Um, but like I would say, like, it's hard. Like, we opened up last year with MIT in the first conference game, and we fell behind 3-0.
Mm,
And then we scored two, and we could have equalized. And I walked away from that game thinking, it could be a challenge this year. Last year we were pretty young, so we were learning sort of on the job in a lot of different spots. So,
mm,
but the team continued to progress, and we got a couple of good conference wins, and then I felt pretty good, like, moving forward. I think we finished
mm,
fifth out of nine, and played MIT in the first round, and really took it to them in the
two,
quarterfinal
yeah,
game. And
yeah.
and like, we were riding high, and then we went to WPI, and I felt like we could have won the game. I think the difference again was a really quality finish by one of their
Yeah.
players, and then they ended up winning the conference tournament and going to the
Mm,
NCAAs. So, um, long answer to a short question, but Kings Point, um, big game, and then every conference game after that is big.
yeah,
Um, you know, so
yeah.
Con College used to have a lot of uh, importance. We went a period of time where we didn't play each other, and sort of the local derby atmosphere that it used to
Hmm.
have is sort of gone away, in
Yeah.
terms of physicality, which is actually probably a good thing. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Um, do you, do you have a for upcoming for the 2024, do you already know, like, your recruiting class? Like, are you done in that regard, or
in
is there
terms of who's coming in this year,
yeah,
yeah, done.
correct. That's already done.
That's
Like,
done and
yeah.
dusted. Um,
Mhm.
sort of focusing all my energies now on the 2025 class.
Mhm.
Get out, see as many. The ECNL national level has been really good to us recently.
Mhm.
It's the MLS kids are a little more of a challenge to get interested to the D3 level, right? So
Yeah.
you do have some, but generally speaking, ECNL national level, the showcases are really, I think, well run, um,
Mhm.
and that's where we've gotten a lot of players. So that's kind of our bread and butter these days.
Mhm.
So we'll go, sort of now have a pretty good list of kids that we have a summer program here called AIM, which is a sort of 1 week little mini boot camp.
Mhm.
So it gets kids on campus, and they sort of get put through the paces of what military life might be like. And that gives them a
Mhm.
good idea.
Mhm.
Wow, I think I might want to pursue this, or no way.
Mhm.
I'm moving on to something else. Then we do an ID clinic in between a couple of those
Yeah.
weeks, and we'll have 40 kids there. We'll go to the Navy ID clinics.
Mhm.
It, Obviously, similar service.
Yeah, yeah.
Not, I
Yeah.
mean, they do such a good job down there that they're bringing in 8 to 10 kids. They'll have
Yeah.
200 kids interested in their school. So
Yeah.
it's a natural,
Yeah.
to sort of go down and see what kids might be interested in
Mhm.
taking a look at us if they can't play there.
Yeah. What are your thoughts for 2024,
Mm.
for the season? Do you have any?
We lost. Um, we had two senior goalkeepers, and so they both graduated. And in terms of starters, other than that, we lost a starting left back and a starting central midfielder. So a lot of returners with a lot of experience. Couple kids coming in who I think can definitely add to the team. Um, so I've last year, at the beginning of the season, I knew we were going to take some lumps early. I'd like to think that we could get off to a good start this year, but the schedule's a good one. We go and play Gordon and Endicott the first weekend. We've got East Con back on the schedule. We play Kings Point in those first sort of 5 or 6 games, and then we hit the conference, and that is a dogfight. So, but I'm looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to every season more ever since COVID, to be honest with you. Having that year where we didn't play was a real challenge, sort of, I think, refocused me in terms of coaching and what's important in coaching. And the older I get, I think the more relaxed I get, I'm not going home stewing over a tough loss for 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have goals that you set for your? It's like, do you have a goal for this fall? Is it to get that out of your craw about the finals and winning the conference?
Always. Yeah. I mean, the goal is to get better as the season goes on. The goal is to try to play, right? Try to enjoy the games. And the ultimate goal is, to win. Right. But there is a journey that's involved in every season. And I think for us here at the Academy, the journey develops leadership, right? And that's why we spend our money on athletics, right? Because you have to learn to be successful. You have to learn to deal with defeat. You have to learn how to interact with people on your team, your teammates, your opponents, and respect is an important component. So you have to figure that out. And growth. I mean, I think the growth of somebody who comes here over the course of 4 years, is, I think, tremendous. And it's hard to really show or explain unless you're able to be in it and see it over the course of 4 years and see what they become during this journey.
That's last question for you. Do you see I'm really curious about this. Do you see kids that come in as a freshman, and can you almost pinpoint this guy is a future leader, not only within the team but also within the Coast Guard? Do you see those? Are those kids that special, or is it just in general that all those kids that come in for you, you're like, all these kids are going to be our future leadership material beyond your program?
I think that I can tell the kids who are going to be the definite future leaders of the team. And I think that those graduates have a higher propensity to be successful as officers in the Coast Guard or the military. It's very interesting though, because there are graduates, there are kids who play for me who might not be the most outward leaders during the course of their time on the team. But when they get out into the Coast Guard, they flourish as leaders a little bit more. And again, some of that has got to do with the job that they might get, or their command, their leadership at their first job, right? That can really inspire them to want to be successful officers. Because those are two different. Being a successful cadet is very different than being a successful officer. You're surviving the 4 years here in some ways, and then you graduate, and now you're an adult, and you're going to your first unit. One of the things that I find so interesting about the military is, a 22-year-old graduates from here, and he's an ensign, right? And he goes to his first boat, his first ship, and he outranks a chief who might have been in the Coast Guard for 20 years.
Holy cannoli.
Just because they're an officer.
Yeah.
And the chief is an enlisted member. And how you navigate that world determines, I think, your success, right? Because the chief knows so much more.
Yeah.
And really can be the person who guides you as a young officer to get you to be a better officer, right? But those are the challenges. But I've got guys.
That's got to be as intimidating. I think I'd be that's got to be intimidating.
Yeah.
Just that process alone of dealing with something like that.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
But
all right. Cool. All right.
I'll give you one last thing. Like, I look out my window. I got a beautiful view of the water here. There's an 87-foot patrol boat down there, and a young former lacrosse player will be the commanding officer of that ship, right, next week. And he's only been out of the academy for 2 years. Right? So he's going to command that boat, that 87-foot boat. He's going to be the person in charge of all the crew on that boat, and he's 2 years removed from this place, right? So that's you can't find that kind of challenge in a lot of places in terms of what you're going to do.
Yeah, I can tell you, 2 years removed from college, you don't want to know what I was doing. Like, it was I was not doing that, that's for sure.
Yep.
I had a totally different impression of what I was supposed to be doing at that time.
Yeah.
All right, last is a quick one. What is the highest ranking officer in the Coast Guard that was at one point a cadet on your team?
I would say commander right now.
Yeah.
So all based on years. So I would be just about ready to have some captain selects. So an admiral is the highest ranking member of highest officer position in the Coast Guard. Admiral, captain, commander, lieutenant commander, lieutenant junior grade, and ensign. So all these guys that played for me and graduated in 2003 have hit their 20-year mark, right? And either are getting out or they'll promote to be a captain. Like I said, Ray Seeplick hired me. He coached here for 32 years before I took the job. So like we're on now 55 years and 2 people coaching here, which is pretty phenomenal. But he's got guys who played for him that have been the commandant of the Coast Guard.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he tells some great, he'll stop by once in a while and say, I went to a change of command for this admiral. And that's pretty neat. People that he stayed in touch with from
yeah.
And that's the same for me. You develop some great relationships. I'm going out to a wedding this weekend in Seattle for a 2015 grad, so looking forward to doing that. And I think, like I said, sports is an important component for them. You develop some good relationships, and you feel like you make a difference. So that's what's great about coaching here.
Well, that's wonderful. Coach, thank you again for your time. Really do appreciate it. Know that you have an admirer. Know that really appreciative of what your young men and women do at the academy and what they end up being is once they get out of there. So really, really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll get to a game. I'd love to see that game against the Merchant Marine. That sounds like a real dinger.
Yeah, in the field you saw, we finally got it returfed, so it looks even.
Oh yeah, I think 3 years ago the turf was like, this looks really uncomfortable.
Yeah. So now it's perfect. So looking forward to the season, without a doubt. So, awesome. Well, I appreciate you talking with me.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. Do appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. Cheers.